Greetings, friends, and welcome to another ministry of the Victory Hour. This ministry is brought to you by the Lord's people at Clavel Assembly in Forster, Rhode Island. My name is Jim Gallagher. I'm the pastor at Clavel Assembly, and someone in a comment said, "Is Clavel a real church in Forster?" Yes, it is a real church. Of course, there is no such thing as a church, but yes, we are a real body of believers, an assembly of Christ that meets in Forster. We have a building. It's right up against the road. You can't miss it. Trying the Scituate-Forster line on Plainfield Pike. Anybody that wants to come, you're free to come. We are real. We're not just some internet fake church, okay? We're not large. By virtue of what we teach, we're not large. But you know what? We're going to the best of our ability, teach what is true, whether people want to hear it or not. I mean, that's our job. Be instant in season and out of a season. Now, I said I was going to leave the subject of Israel, and I want to do that. I'm not going to do it today, only because I saw a comment in a recent video, and I wanted to kind of answer it for, some things I left unsaid, and this guy raised a question like, hey. So I figured, well, okay, now I guess I'll take the time to say it now. So I'll extend this a little bit more, because the question that was raised was, wait a minute, I made a point about Israel, the Zionist state, falsely called Israel, had Marxist origins. They were revolutionary Marxist origins. So we talked about Marxism and the foundation of the Zionist state, which the dispensationalists and the Christian Zionists think, that's God's nation. I'll bless him that bless thee. Look, the secular, godless nation of fake Israel in the Middle East is not Old Covenant Israel that David served over. Neither are they New Covenant Israel. But that's another story. One we've told a long story on so far. Just go see our series on the true Israel of God. But the complaint was, now wait a minute, yes, the Zionist state of Israel did have a hard leftist, socialist, Marxist origin. That's true, right from the beginning. But by the time you get to like around the 70s or so, it began to change and they adopted capitalism. Now they're just like us. He didn't quite say it that way, but that's what he was saying. And I tried to find his comment before I sat down to make this video. I couldn't find it. I wanted to refresh my mind exactly what he said. And I wasn't able to find it. Maybe I was looking at the wrong video, but I was looking at the video where we were talking about Zionism and Marxism. Maybe I went over it 2 or 3 times. Maybe I just kept missing it. I don't know. But I do remember the essence of it. The essence was, yeah, you're right, but that's not true anymore, so you're misrepresenting Israel as it is now. They have changed. They're capitalists now. You sure about that? So I want to talk about that. And I want to do it. I'll start this way. In Jeremiah chapter 13. Now, Jeremiah is predicting that he's prophesying that Israel is going into Babylonian captivity because of her unbelief and sin. And I'm jumping in the middle here, but in Jeremiah 13 and verse 19, the cities of the south shall be shut up, and none shall open them. Judah shall be carried away captive, all of it. It shall be wholly carried away captive. Lift up your eyes, behold them that come from the north. Where is the flock that was given thee, thy beautiful flock? What wilt thou say when he shall punish thee? See, the Babylonians are going to be the rod of God's indignation against Judah. For thou hast taught them to be captains, and as chief over thee. Shall not arrows take thee as a woman in travail? And if thou say in thine heart, wherefore come these things upon me? If Judah wants to say, well, wait a minute, you're saying all these bad things are going to happen to us, we're going to go into captivity, Jeremiah, but why would God do that to us? Like as if they were pure as the driven snow. And if thou say in thine heart, wherefore come these things upon me? Well, Jeremiah gives them the answer, as if it came from God. For the greatness of thine iniquity art thy skirts discovered, and thy heels made bare. Can the Ethiopian change his skin? Well, I guess Michael Jackson tried. I'm not so sure he was Ethiopian, but you get the idea. Can the Ethiopian change his skin? Well, no. I can't change mine, you can't change yours. Can the Ethiopian change his skin, or the leopard his spots? Then may ye also do good that are accustomed to do evil? In other words, he's saying, look, the Ethiopian can't change his skin, the leopard can't change its spots, and you, Israel, you, Judah, you who are accustomed to doing evil, you're not going to turn around and do good. The leopard cannot change his spots. Therefore, the Lord says, will I scatter them as the stubble that passeth away by the wind of the wilderness. Now, thank God, through regeneration, God can change us from the inside out. But when the Lord says through his prophet Jeremiah, the leopard cannot change his spots, the Ethiopian cannot change his skin, and neither will you turn from your wicked way. And the Lord must bring judgment and chastisement upon them, because they will not repent. They had gone too far. The leopard doesn't change his spots. Now, that's what you've got to understand is kind of my background thought to this question of, wait a minute, the Zionist state of Israel has changed. Yeah, they had a radical Marxist beginning, but they kind of changed that, and they became a consumerist society in the 70s. And now they're just like us. Wrong, they are not. Although maybe we're becoming like them, I'm afraid. The leopard doesn't change its spots. You know, this is the first time I've made a victory hour here on YouTube ever since Charlie Kirk was gunned down by a maniac. And, you know, Charlie Kirk, I think he did a pretty good job when he went to college campuses, and I thought he deported himself well in that environment, and he would stick to his guns, and he'd show respect and kindness to people that were so viciously disagreeing with him, but he'd respond with his understanding and with strength, and he was quite good at it. He was a rabid Zionist. That was a problem. But, you know, he didn't deserve to die. Most things that he would say, I would agree with, and he did a good work in that regard. And, but the hard left, you got to realize liberalism, the hard left form of liberalism, is built on hate. They are socialists, Marxists, revolutionaries. And the leopard doesn't change its spot. That's my point about the Zionist state of Israel. I agree that in the 70s, the Zionist state of Israel was becoming a consumerist society and seemed to be adopting more capitalism. What is capitalism? And by the way, capitalism isn't the same. Look, predatory capitalism, which is built on malice and evil and deception, is not what, and by the way, capitalism is a bad term because the Marxists made up the term capitalism. So I don't even like using the word. And then if you say, well, talk about free trade. Well, when you talk about free trade, a lot of times that's the neocons and globalism. Sometimes you're at a loss for words. But the leopard doesn't change its spots, and neither does the Marxist. I want to show you that. Did you go to did you see the libs on TikTok? The libs on TikTok? Rejoicing in the murder of Charlie Kirk. It was a great thing. They were laughing and rejoicing, high-fiving each other. People saying, oh, I would have done it myself if that guy didn't. I'd like to take that guy out for a meal. All this kind of horror. These are American citizens. They shouldn't be. You say, Pastor Gallagher, see, you're showing yourself not to be an American because we're a pluralistic society. Well, you know, the Bible has something to say about that. How can two walk together except they be agreed? I mean, you are familiar with human nature, right? Doesn't that principle ring true? How can two walk together except they be agreed? At least we came from originally the common stock of the culture of Christianity as it had spread into the West. And that kind of formed our moral basis, which gave us a cohesion and then built on constitutional principles. But we've thrown out the faith of Christ and we've thrown out the Constitution. So the only thing we've got look forward to is destruction in the end, self-destruction, because we don't have an identity. Because two cannot walk together unless they be agreed. So we need repentance is what we need. That's what we need. But that's another story. I can't get into all that. Just you see these crazy liberals rejoicing in the death of Charlie Kirk. I mean, he had a wife. My understanding is his wife was there watching him give the speech. She saw him get killed. Charlie Kirk had 2 small children. These hardcore leftist liberals should lose their citizenship. Oh, Pastor, that's not... No, wait a minute. Listen. What concord hath Christ with Belial? What part hath he that believeth with an infidel? The reason we're supposed to come out from among them, be ye separate, because if we don't, the corrupt will corrupt the righteous. The righteous don't separate because, oh, we're so holy and better than everyone else. We don't want to soil ourselves. No, it's that the wicked will corrupt the righteous. Separate. Acknowledge your weakness. Stand for something that's right. We've got to change things in this country. We're not going to last. That's my opinion. Except for God's divine intervention. And if we do technically last, we won't last as the United States, what we once were. It'll be like a totally different country with the same name. And America will have died. We're already 3/4 dead. Spiritually and morally. The leopard doesn't change its spots, particularly the Marxist kind. I've got this book, The Whole of Their Lives. And the author was the head of the American Communist Party in the teens and going into the 20s. Well, in the teens, yeah, going towards, well, maybe it was 1917 or 18. I forget when. A long time ago I read this. But somewhere between 1917 and the early 1920s, he was kicked out of the Communist Party because he wanted to. He was tired of Russia being the head of the global Marxist revolution. Hey, what about us Americans? And with a little bit of American independent streak in that communist American. The author, Benjamin Gitlow. There's a foreword by Max Eastman. And this fellow, having been in the Communist Party in the United States, he knows what he's talking about. And then he ended up, when Stalin attacked him and cut him off, then he kind of turned from communism, saw its debaseness, and ended up becoming one of the greatest anti-communists ever. And he wrote this book, The Whole of Their Lives, Benjamin Gitlow. You ought to read it. But in the very foreword of this book by Max Eastman, this is what he writes about communism. Our civilization isn't, and someone says, oh, here's a boomer thinking about communism. You don't think communism was real? Was it used by globalists to achieve a globalist end? Of course it was. But it was still real. And this hate, which is what communism is as old as the hills, before there ever was a Karl Marx. Anyway, Max Eastman writes, Our civilization is in peril because so many eager and uncritical minds, beguiled by the communist ideal, instead of being trained in virtue, are trained to renounce all moral standards in the service of their ideal. They want redistributionism. They want to take what their neighbor has. It's called communism. And they'll give up all their morals to get that. My phone's ringing. I'm going to make it go off if it keeps ringing. Someone picked up downstairs. Good. Should turn that phone off. To those consecrating themselves to communism must not only cast out truth, mercy, justice, and personal honor, but undergo, if you're going to go with communism and stick with it, you're going to have to undergo, he says, a sickening discipline in lies, cruelty, crime, and self-abasement. Well, it sounds like the Democrat Party. And by the way, the Republicans aren't much better. They must endorse such Leninist maxims as these. Quote, these are the words of Vladimir Lenin, head of the Soviet Union, its first premier. Lenin said, "We do not believe in external principles of morality. Communist morality is identical with the fight to strengthen the dictatorship of the proletariat." End quote. That's Vladimir Lenin. You can't get more Marxist than Vladimir Lenin, except I suppose you could say Karl Marx. But he says there's no external principles of morality. Communist morality is identical with the fight to strengthen the dictatorship of the proletariat. See, the communist says what we're trying to do is establish the dictatorship of the proletariat, and we can do anything we want, moral or immoral, to make that happen because the ends justify the means. That's the thinking of communism. That's why they can shoot Charlie Kirk and rejoice. Doesn't matter what you think about Charlie Kirk's opinions. You don't rejoice at murder. Lenin goes on. And Max Eastman is saying, hey, these principles of Lenin have to be embraced in order for you to walk in communism. And he's right. Lenin says we must be ready to employ trickery, deceit, law-breaking, withholding, and concealing truth. This is what our politicians do. Are we becoming Marxists? Yes, we are. Lenin continues, we can and must write in a language which sows among the masses hate, revulsion, scorn, and the like toward those of differing opinion. If you want to know why MSNBC does what they do, that's why. They know they need to sow amongst the masses hate, revulsion, scorn, and the like towards those of differing opinions. Oh, they didn't like the opinions of Charlie Kirk, so kill him. That's not America. It's what America has become, though. And then Max Eastman says, this doctrine of immorality on principle, invented by Marx, brought into focus by Lenin, and carried into limitless action by Stalin, is playing a major role in the disintegration of our Greco-Christian civilization. The Whole of Their Lives by Benjamin Gitlow. Now, if that's the true nature of communism, and they say, well, these communist states have changed. No, communists don't change. If you want to get out of communism, as they say, you have to shoot your way out. They don't vote their way out. You have to shoot your way out. So, did so the contention was that the Zionist state of Israel, yeah, they were very socialist and Marxist, but in the 70s they began to become a capitalist consumerism society, and that's no longer true. You're misrepresenting them, Pastor. No, I'm not. The leopard doesn't change its spots. You don't become this and then unbecome this. You say, well, that man did. Yeah, because of the horrors that were perpetrated on him by Stalin, it woke him up. But that doesn't happen in mass. For communism to continue for any length of time, it always has to reinvent itself, and there's a reason. That's because it doesn't work. Socialism and communism removes from its adherents, from most of its adherents, personal initiative, motivation, and drive, because you're living off someone else. So you can kick your feet up, and then you feel entitled. And it clogs the arteries. It's stultifying. Look at China, communist China. Oh, yeah. Oh, Pastor Gallagher, they're not communists. They've become a consumerist society. They're very capitalist. Yeah, aren't they? Yeah. I agree. They've changed a lot. Does that mean they're not communists? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that the communists in China realized if they continued on the trajectory they were in, they would destroy themselves. All personal initiative is lost. Communism corrupts people. And so they had to reignite a fire by going back into capitalism, allowing people to make a little bit of somewhat of a profit, and which would be greatly shared with the government. Thank you, yes. But they haven't changed. See, true communism isn't really, this is what I really want to say. True communism is not really, it was never really about doctrinaire economic theory as a means of producing a utopian society. It was sold that way, and a lot of the dupes believed it, and they went along with it until they found out that wasn't working out. They say it was a doctrinaire economic philosophy that would enable the rise of the dictatorship of the proletariat, and the people would rule. They would govern themselves, and well, it didn't work out that way in the Soviet Union. No, communism in the end is about revolution. It's about chaos. It's about destruction. It's about hate. It's about the aggregation of power. Communism at its root was really, what it was really about is rebelling against the establishment West, which had as its moral backdrop the faith of Christ. The West had been Christianized, and they hated it. They hated it with a passion. So they came up with economic theories as a means to destroy, in the end, the work of Christ. Because that's what they hate the most. Jesus says they don't hate you, they hate me. That's what he said to his disciples. And it's a pretty sound principle. That's pretty much how I believe the communists are really operating. They hate Christ. What they love is revolution. And in the end, it corrupts, and power corrupts, and ultimate power corrupts absolutely. Communism is the aggregation of power so that you can give it to the people. It doesn't happen. It never has. It never will. It's not about some doctrinaire economic theory from Das Kapital. Instead, it's more about the revolution of Satan himself. It's about revolution and stealing and murder. So, but I mean, China had to change in order to maintain their communism, because communism will implode on itself. Socialism destroys a society. They will spend themselves into oblivion, And that's what's happening to us, because we are being revolutionized. It's been going on for decades and decades. And the process continues. You can change the names. You can no longer call it communism. You can just call it another name. It's just another name for the same thing. They tweak it. Now, it's this hardening of the arteries, this sluggishness in the veins, and things slow down, and it's not productive. This book here. Look, China had to change. Russia, too. We're going to talk about that. Russia had to change these communist places. There's Russia, right? You got Putin, and Putin isn't wrong in his contentions about Ukraine. Putin was being stiffed over by the UN, who lied to him. And we're backing up the liars, and now we should not get involved with that. But there's people, and then some people just, because Putin was right about certain things, and he was making overtures to appeal to Christian males in the West, they began to think it like he was some kind of hero. Yeah, well, when he gets a chance, what's he do? He rubs shoulders with Chairman Xi and North Korea and Iran. Look, the leopard doesn't change its spots. Is Putin doing a lot of things for the interests of his nation? Well, I can give him that. That's more than what our leaders do. Now, this book is written by that man. You know who he is, Mikhail Gorbachev. And the name of the book is Perestroika, New Thinking for Our Country and the World, by Mikhail Gorbachev, head of the Soviet Union back in the 80s. So Perestroika, glasnost, it was the democratization of the Soviet Union. See, they changed. They became like Westerners. They became capitalists. Why? Now, don't be fooled by them. And don't be fooled by fake Israel. Let me show you what I mean. I'm right out of the horse's mouth. This is from Gorbachev. On page 34, he says, Perestroika. So Perestroika was supposed to be the democratization and the westernizing of the Soviet Union. Like, oh, see, we won. We won the Cold War. The Berlin Wall can come down. And thank God for Mikhail Gorbachev, who brought capitalism to Russia through Perestroika. And so he writes a book about Perestroika. What does he say? Perestroika means overcoming the stagnation process. What does he mean by that? He's acknowledging in the book that communism, because of its statism, and there's no economic incentive, like, and you can be a doctor and work your brains out, studying and doing things, but you won't make any more than the shoe shine boy. Well, how many people are going to want to go to the work to become a doctor? Some will, out of some sense of altruism, I suppose, but most won't. It removes all personal initiative. And the Bible does teach the principle of private property, something utterly negated by the communists. So Gorbachev says, Perestroika. Oh, is he going to become like America? Wait a minute now. He says Perestroika means overcoming the stagnation process. He realized that their arteries were clogged in the Soviet Union. They needed to reinvigorate the Soviet Union, or else it would all fall apart and the revolution would die. We can't have that. We got to inject strength into it. Perestroika was the means to do it. So they have to reinvent themselves. Perestroika means overcoming the stagnation process, breaking down the braking mechanism, creating a dependable and effective mechanism for the acceleration of social and economic progress, and giving it greater dynamism. Well, he's saying, yeah, we were bad off. We were like the registry. You know, you go to the registry. I don't know how, I think the registry is supposed to be a little bit better now, but historically, you go to the registry, some person comes up there that looks like that's the last thing they want to do is be there. And like they're on break, and yeah. And they take their time. Everything moves in slow motion. It's not like a private industry, is it? No. The last 2 times I've been, it was a lot better, but that was historically how it was. And that was the Soviet Union. So they need Perestroika in some consumerism brought in and some motivation to reignite the revolution. He says Perestroika means mass initiative. It is the comprehensive development of democracy, socialist self-government, encouragement of initiative and creative endeavor, improved order and discipline, because all this was lacking under communism. It was like one massive registry. More glasnost, criticism, and self-criticism in all spheres of society. He says that because he noted that, and I haven't read it to you, but he noted that under communism, you couldn't criticize. If you criticize your superiors, you go to Siberia. You criticize your communist superiors, Joseph Stalin will clamp down on you. So you shut your mouth and you do what you're told. And so all the wind is knocked out of everybody's sails. So we need to get some freedom, liberty, and a little degree of freedom of exchange of thoughts so that we can make the communist machine work more efficiently. That's the function of the democratization of the communists, according to Mikhail Gorbachev. He says it is utmost, he says this, Perestroika is the all-around intensification of the Soviet economy. The revival and development of the principles of democratic centralism in running the national economy. The universal introduction of economic methods, the renunciation of management by injunction and by administrative methods, and the overall encouragement of innovation and socialist enterprise. Yeah, there's no innovation when it comes to communism. Perestroika means a resolute shift to scientific methods, an ability to provide a solid scientific basis for every new initiative. It means the combination of the achievements of the scientific and technological revolution with a planned economy. Now, you let government plan life for you, you're going to find out what hell on earth is, if I may describe it that way. Down the bottom of the same page, page 35, he says the essence of Perestroika, the Americanization of the Soviet Union. The essence of Perestroika lies in that it unites socialism with democracy. It doesn't get rid of socialism, it unites it. It's like getting a steroid injection. You're going to get a little bit of strength for your no good, lousy Marxist corpse. It unites socialism with democracy and revives the Leninist concept of socialist construction, both in theory and in practice. Such is the essence of Perestroika, which accounts for its genuine revolutionary spirit and its all-embracing scope. I don't mean to bore you with this Marxist literature. Look at that time. I'm going to have to do a second part on this, sorry. It needs to be done. He says, does Perestroika mean we are giving up socialism, or at least some of its foundations? And his answer is no. Much to our chagrin, we were told otherwise. He says, to put an end to all the rumors and speculations that abound in the West about this, I would like to point out once again that we are conducting all our reforms in accordance with the socialist choice. Yeah, there you go. We are looking within socialism rather than outside of it for the answers to all the questions that arise. We assess our successes and errors alike by socialist standards. Those who hope that we shall move away from the socialist path will be greatly disappointed. Every part of our program of Perestroika, and the program as a whole, for that matter, is fully based on the principle of more socialism. The next page he says, we want more socialism and therefore more democracy. See, he's acknowledging democracy leads to socialism. It does. We were supposed to be a constitutional republic. We don't have that anymore. We're not a strict democracy yet, but the left is working towards it because democracy takes advantage of man's total depravity, which will cause him to want what somebody else has. If he can take it from him legally through the government, he's happy. More socialism means more democracy, openness, and collectivism in everyday life, he says. Oh. Page 42. He says 14 out of 15 citizens living in the USSR today were born after the revolution. And we are still being urged to give up socialism. Why should the Soviet people, who have grown and gained in strength under socialism, abandon that system? We will spare no effort to develop and strengthen socialism. He says a little bit later, just think, how can we agree that 1917, that's the Bolshevik Revolution, how can we agree that 1917 was a mistake? And all the 70 years of our life, work, effort, and battles, also a complete mistake, that we're going in the wrong direction, ? Gorbachev says no. A strict and impartial view of the facts of history suggests only one conclusion. It is the socialist option that has brought formerly backward Russia to the right place, the place the Soviet Union now occupies in human progress. We have no reason to speak of the October Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, and socialism in a low voice, as though ashamed of them. Kind of like the triple ethnics, where the Jews were running the porn industry. We don't have to speak in hushed tones. What do we got to be ashamed of, says Nathan Abrams. Really? Our successes are immense and indisputable, but we see the past in its entirety and complexity. Our most tremendous achievements do not prevent us from seeing contradictions in the development of our society, our errors and omissions. He's admitting there are some. And our ideology itself is critical and revolutionary by nature. I'm running out of time here. I'm just going to finish reading my quotes from this book. We are not going to change Soviet power, of course, or abandon its fundamental principles, but we acknowledge the need for changes that will strengthen socialism and make it more dynamic and politically meaningful. They're trying to strengthen their globalist desires for Marxist tyranny by employing some of the wisdom of the West as like an emergency booster shot in their sluggish socialist arms. And like a revolutionary, he says, our day-to-day activities must be unparalleled, revolutionary. Perestroika requires party leaders who are very close to Lenin's ideal of a revolutionary Bolshevik. We were sold by the American people, and even Reagan. They're becoming like us. They've thrown away communism. Communism is dead, they said. It isn't dead. It never was dead. They're changing the face. They're taking a booster shot. And once they get enough strength, they're going to revert back to the same garbage they had before. And they didn't really leave it. They're looking for global revolution and tyrannical control. The reason they're democratizing is to strengthen the ideal of the revolutionary Bolshevik. I don't know what more you want. He says officialdom, red tape, patronizing attitudes, and careerism are incompatible with this ideal. What he's saying is that's what communism produced, and it was ruining us, and we're about to be destroyed. So we need a quick shot in the arm from some lessons from the West so we can continue the Marxist revolution. Oh, you see, they become the capitalists. They're communists. They're revolutionaries. And then lastly, because I got to stop here, this is page 96. Mikhail Gorbachev says, what we need is not pure doctrinaire invented socialism, but real Leninist socialism. Do I really have to? I don't really have to go to another day. Just let me read this. You say, but you're talking about Russia, and then you were talking about China. Yeah. And they've all, reimagined themselves, not to undo their Marxist principles of revolution, but to strengthen the sluggishness that is inherent in communism and socialism, so they can continue the revolution. Same thing with the Zionist state of Israel. They're still revolutionaries. They're still globalists, New World Order type of fanatics. And the fellow that was complaining about me saying, oh, they've changed, didn't he pay attention when I read to you? And one guy says, if you gave some of the references to what you read, that make that video perfect about communism and Zionism. What are you talking about? I gave them to you. And this is one of the big ones. Look magazine. This is a reference. Write it down. Look magazine. That used to be a thing. From June 16th, 1962. Look magazine. June 16th, 1962. Write it down. There's a picture of Ben-Gurion from Israel. David Ben-Gurion, Prime Minister of Israel, 1962. And here's what David Ben-Gurion, the Prime Minister of God's chosen nation, Israel. And this is what he said. The image of the world in 1987 have traced in my imagination. The Cold War will be a thing of the past. Whoa. In 1962, David Ben-Gurion, the Prime Minister of Israel, was predicting in 1962 that in 1987, that's what he said, a very specific year, that in 1987 the Cold War will be a thing of the past. Well, the Cold War became a thing of the past through Perestroika, right? Oh, let me open up the cover of this book. When was this book published? Perestroika, New Thinking for Our Country and the World. It's right here. And it says copyright 1987. Yeah. The Berlin Wall came down 2 years later, 1989. Gorbachev wrote this in 1987. Ben-Gurion says, just taking a stab in the dark. My prediction is that in the year 2000, nope. The year 1990, nope. 1995, no. He says 1987, very specific. He says, the image of the world in 1987, as traced in my imagination, I think it was more than his imagination. He says the Cold War will be a thing of the past. How'd he know that? Well, it wasn't really a thing of the past, but it would be sold as that and believed as such. He says internal pressure from the constantly growing intelligentsia in Russia for more freedom and the pressure of the masses for raising their living standards. See, the hardening of the arteries I told you about in Russia. The demand for raising of the living standards may lead to a gradual democratization of the Soviet Union. Predicts David Ben-Gurion, the little Marxist. On the other hand, he says, the increasing influence of the workers and farmers and the rising political importance of men of science may transform the United States into a welfare state with a planned economy. Well, that's what we got going on. Western and Eastern Europe will become a federation of autonomous states having a socialist and democratic regime. Yes, that's the EU. He was 100% right. How could he know that in 1962 with pinpointing the date and all the countries it would affect? Now you answer me that question. In Jerusalem, the United Nations, this is Ben Gurion, in Jerusalem, the United Nations, a truly United Nations, will build a shrine of the prophets to serve the federated union of all continents. This will be the seat of the Supreme Court of mankind. Yeah, that book, The Making of the Modern, the Zionist State of Israel, by Shlomo Avenari. What's the name of the book? I read it to you. But every chapter was a chapter on a Jewish person that helped bring about the formation of the Zionist State of Israel. And it was all based on Marxist revolutionary principles. I read you from that. I'm not going to read it again. And they're looking for Jerusalem to be the head of the world. Build a shrine of the prophets to serve the federated union of all continents. Jerusalem will be the seat of the Supreme Court of mankind. Oh, I should go over to you about the Supreme Court. Is it the Supreme Court building in Jerusalem? You wouldn't believe the evil that's designed in the architecture of the building. Oh, I don't know if but look. How did he know that? Well, he was a Marxist. Has the leopard changed its spots? My answer is no. No, it hasn't. The leopard doesn't change its spots. But he may hide in the bushes, right? So he can pounce and kill his prey. He'll use stealth and deception, like the Mossad. By way of deception, thou shalt wage war. Oh, yeah, it's not the old doctrinaire, old language, the Labor Party in the Zionist state. Yeah, that's like kind of dead now. Oh, but it's just put on a new face. The revolution is just as real. 9/11. Pearl Harbor. Yeah. Maybe I ought to go over that with you one day. Bombing Iran. You might as well paint little Trump smile faces on the bombs that they drop. What are we doing? Congress, as Pat Buchanan said, is Israeli-occupied territory. Yeah, the revolution is very strong in America. And we've been duped to think it's under the guise of freedom, democracy, and capitalism. Crony capitalism isn't capitalism. It isn't freedom. It's statism. It's a form of fascism, a wedding of the state with corporations. This is not America anymore. Trump said he was going to save us from these things. Now he's running headlong into the arms of the internationalists when it comes to foreign policy. To our financial destruction. The communists have changed. China has changed. Russia has changed. And the fake Zionist state of Israel has changed. Why did they change? To strengthen the cause of the revolution, the anti-Christian revolution they're engaged in. Now, you can pretend they just became like good old apple pie and Americana. That's all the Zionist state is. They're just like, the Waltons. Grandpa Walton. You know Grandpa Walton, the actor that played Grandpa Walton? He was a homosexual communist. I mean, an aggressive card-carrying member, communist agitator. Yeah, Grandpa Walton. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Yes, I know, since the 70s, it isn't the same doctrinaire Marxism and revolution. It's the same revolution, though. It is the same revolution, but it's put on a different face. They got a different game face on. But the anti-Christian revolution is the same. The desire for global domination is the same. And they still want the Supreme Court of mankind to be in Jerusalem. Now, they have competitors amongst the globalists that might vie for that, but everybody has their fight. The chessboard has been moved around some, but the game's still the same. Now, look, when I come back next time, I don't care what people put in the comments. I just want to be done with Israel for now and go to a totally new subject. So I don't even know what it is yet. We'll play it by ear, but I do want to thank you for listening. This is an addendum. I don't know what I'll call this. It's an addendum to Israel and Marxism. I'll figure out a title for it. I guess you know it before I do. Well, that can't be. I have to put it up there, right? Well, I want to thank you for listening, and thank you for invite your friends and say, hey, if you can take this guy, he does say some things that, we probably should know. And I think as Christians, and I say these things really for the sake of the Christian Zionists, you have to stop and think what you're doing in the name of Jesus. Because the leopard doesn't change his spots. I want to thank you for watching. This is Jim Gallagher, reminding you in the words of our blessed Lord and Savior, ye shall know the truth shall make you free.